Hello and good afternoon. My name is Nate Bailey, and I'm working in collaboration with FamilyKind, a nonprofit organization that empowers children, parents, and couples before, during, and after divorce. We are able to bring to you this peer-to-peer webinar series for professionals for free of charge because of the generosity of our two sponsors, those being Our Family Wizard and SoberLink. Now, I'm a representative of Our Family Wizard, which is a comprehensive app that enables you to conduct all of your co-parenting communication on a single platform. Powerful tools document your parenting time, reimbursement requests, payments, exchanges, and more. This means less conflict and more energy to focus on your children. Now, the other sponsor is SoberLink, which supports accountability for sobriety and child safety, combining a breathalyzer with facial recognition and wireless connectivity for real-time results and reports. SoberLink's new family assistance program offers alcohol monitoring free of charge to anyone who qualifies. By increasing their total reach in the mission of supporting families affected by alcohol abuse, this program will help to continue to reduce litigation and foster peace of mind. Now, today's webinar is entitled How to Bring Peace to the Pain of a Gray Divorce, and we are going to learn from two experienced professionals today, the Honorable Evelyn Frazee and Susan Pollet. Justice Frazee served as the New York State Supreme Court Justice in the 7th Judicial District from January of 1993 all the way through June of 2019. Susan Pollet has been a family law attorney for 40 years and is the director of the New York State Parent Education and Awareness Program, which was designed to help separating or divorcing parents better understand the effects of their breakup on their children. Now, a few housekeeping notes before I pass it over. Today, the program will run for 1 hour, and feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A tool found in your Zoom window, and we will take some time for those questions at the end of the presentation. But that is all we have for the opening remarks, so I will pass it off to our speakers.
Okay, thank you, Nate. And as you can see on the screen, I'm Supreme Court Justice Evelyn Frazee, now retired, so it's fun for me to get back into the middle of these things again. And my co-presenter also on the screen is Susan Pollet. So it's a delight to be working with her again because we both work together on the New York State Parent Education Advisory Board and Program. I just want to welcome everybody and just repeat that the topic to be covered in today's peer-to-peer session is how to bring peace to the pain of a gray divorce. Our goal is to familiarize you with the subject of gray divorce, as well as to provide you with some ways you can help assist your more mature divorce clients and patients with making that transition from pain to peace. And just to repeat what Nate said, I just want to remind you that we're going to take questions at the end using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And I just want to say too that I want to thank FamilyKind for hosting this presentation, and also thank Susan Pollet for bringing attention to gray divorce through her book, A Gray Divorce Support Group from Pain to Peace. Now, what is gray divorce? The term gray divorce reflects the trend of an increasing divorce rate for older couples, defined as people over 50 years old who have been in long-term marriages. Interestingly, wives are seeking divorces at a higher rate than husbands. Some studies have concluded that in the last 25 years, the divorce rate for Americans over the age of 50 has more than doubled, such that 1 out of every 4 people going through a divorce is 50 or older. As of 2019, more than half of all gray divorces impacted couples who were married for over 20 years. We're going to highlight a number of the issues of which you should be aware when working with more age-mature adults or ending a long-term marriage. My co-presenter, as I mentioned, Susan Pollet, had her book entitled A Gray Divorce Support Group from Pain to Peace published this year. And Susan, what prompted you to write this book?
Well, I knew that I wanted to write about gray divorce because of the statistical rise for that demographic. You really can't pick up a newspaper without reading about a celebrity going through it. We all have people we know in our lives who have undergone a gray divorce. And if you even go on the websites of many professionals, they have specific portions of it just addressing the whole gray divorce phenomenon. I wanted to focus on women in the hope that my observations would resonate for both sexes, and women would see themselves in my observations, and that men would understand gray divorce from the female perspective. Divorce support groups are not for everyone, but I used it as a vehicle to explain many of the issues that we're going to be talking about today: grief, physical and mental health, financial aspects, employment, age discrimination in employment, also dating and sex and relationships with family members and others, and how they have to be recalibrated. And finally, a section on moving on and where these different characters could move on in their lives. I have 5 women in this gray divorce support group. And as you can see from the cover, they come in many shades. They come from different socioeconomic groups, different educational levels. But in listening to their stories and how they're interacting, you can see where there's a human element, a commonality. And probably the most important, which is exemplified in the collage of the women holding hands, is that by hearing other people's stories, it makes people going through it not feel so alone. And many people don't want to go through a gray divorce support group for support. But in reading this book, they can experience what it might be like, and they can do it from the comfort of their homes. So hopefully the observations in the book will assist your clients and you in understanding this phenomenon. There is a lot of literature on the reasons for the rise in gray divorces. I'm sure you're all aware, because of the societal acceptance of divorce. And as Justice Frazee said, more women are actually requesting it. And it's because more have jobs and they earn money, and they have options now to leave marriages where they may not have had that option in the past. Some couples grow apart, so they split after the children grow up and leave the nest. And Justice Frazee is going to talk about the implications of that later on. Baby boomers, as individualists, sometimes put their needs above others and engage in affairs outside the marriage. And with online dating, it increases opportunities for people. Some elders believe that there's still time to find satisfaction in a relationship. They only have so many years left. They're living longer. They don't want to stay in a situation that they're not finding a good one. Also, sometimes there's healthcare issues. If one marriage partner hasn't stayed healthy and fit and active, and can find somebody else who is, sometimes that enters into the fray. And one of the characters in the book have that issue. And there's also addictions of alcohol, drugs, pornography, sex, gambling. All of that can enter into it. Justice Frazee, you've presided over many cases involving gray divorces, and I think it would be interesting for everybody to hear your unique perspective on it.
Yes, Susan, as Nate mentioned at the beginning, I was on the Supreme Court bench for just almost 27 years. And during that time, I did preside over several gray divorces. And I have to say, you pretty extensively covered all the reasons why people in the latter phase of life are seeking divorce in greater numbers than in the past. However, I have to say there was one case which sticks in my mind, over which I presided, and that involved a couple that was divorcing in order to be eligible to access better resources for the wife's health care. This was probably about 20 years ago, so I don't recall the specific reason why their being divorced was an economic advantage. However, I felt it was a unique circumstance that has hopefully been addressed under the healthcare laws. I also saw people who were unhappy in their relationship move forward with divorce in order to secure more financial stability that might otherwise occur by remaining together, such as accessing a retirement plan sooner and securing a better financial arrangement than would occur under the right of election, had they been basically an attempt made in the future to disinherit them. Also providing certainty of disposition of one's assets via divorce that also might happen under a will with possible changes was another reason people might divorce, is again as a reason for they want to seek financial stability. One thing that did impress me when I handled gray divorces is the more palpable sense of fear that I detected in some of the more age-mature divorcing parties than for younger people who are divorcing. I suspect this comes not only from a fear of the unknown and what the future will hold, but also from the fact that the future and the time for recovery, both emotionally and financially, are much shorter than for a divorce that occurs when the parties are younger. And that many opportunities that may have been available when younger are no longer there. So, but I do want to note that fear is not the only emotion associated with a divorce. There's also grief. And I know, Susan, do you want to take us through some of those stages and how that affects a divorcing older couple?
Yes, I really think what you're saying about fear really resonates. And everybody on this call probably recognizes the 5 stages of grief, as stated on the PowerPoint: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And you know that these were developed by the Swiss psychiatrist, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she first discussed it in her book on death and dying. While they were based on terminally ill patients, since that time, her model has been applied to other kinds of losses. And it's good to revisit them in order to understand your clients. She and others have explained that the stages are not linear. People go back and forth from anger to acceptance to anger to maybe anger. And they can spend a different amount of time in the various stages. And sometimes they get stuck in one phase, and that can make professionals assisting them's lives a little more complicated. In the context of divorce, as you recognize, the denial stage is really a way to deal with overwhelming emotions. They pretend the loss didn't happen and there's not going to be a divorce. In the anger stage, reality sets in, and in order to cope with all those intense feelings, they may redirect the anger and blame others, or they may question their belief in God if they're religious. The anger may mask itself in bitterness or resentment, but it's considered an important step in the healing process. And you may see your clients going through the bargaining stage, where they think if they could have changed something about themselves, they could avoid the grief through some kind of negotiation that, if they were neater, if they cleaned the house better, if they had better sex, then their spouse would have stayed in the marriage. And then, you see a lot of clients, I'm sure, in the depression stage, where there's a feeling of emptiness. It can be very difficult. They're very low on energy. They feel numb. They're in a fog, withdrawn, overwhelmed, confused, heavy, hopeless, and some are even suicidal. And, if you're dealing with this area of the law or in psychology, this is all part of what, you're going through with your clients. And there is an acceptance stage for most people, and their emotions can start to stabilize. You see that. It doesn't mean that they've moved past the loss, but they've accepted it and they understand what it means in their life. And this can take a different amount of time for different people. They're all snowflakes, as you know. So without really understanding this grief process and where your clients are at, it may be more difficult to assist them because you're trying to move them in one direction while they're in a different stage from where you think they ought to be. So being sensitive will make a difference in the outcomes, and you can help move your clients along to a better place. Justice Frazee?
Sure. In addition to knowing your client's emotional state, I think it's important also to understand their needs and what they want out of the divorce. I think that's essential to identify what your client really wants from the severing of the marital relation, because it may not always be assets or money. For instance, a party may just need to tell his or her story. On more than one occasion, once a party testified and felt that he or she had an opportunity to be heard, opposition to the divorce was withdrawn, and the divorce was allowed to proceed as uncontested. So it is important to explore your client's emotional needs and attitudes toward the divorce and the other party. Another recurring consideration is sensitivity to the parties' emotions, so negotiation or mediation can have the best chance for success. Where feasible, it is important for the parties to have the opportunity to participate in shaping their futures after the divorce. I am a strong proponent and advocate for negotiation or mediation to resolve the differences of divorce, as long as the parties have fairly equal bargaining power or representation to equal any power imbalance. Well, I think the initiative to introduce mediation early in the divorce proceedings is in large part admirable. My experience is that it cannot be done at the expense of full and complete knowledge and sharing of information that discovery can provide, and without sensitivity to the parties' individual emotional states. So it's important for all involved in the proceedings, that is the clients, the judge, attorneys, mediator, and any other professionals, to be attuned to both a party's emotional readiness and informed readiness to negotiate, and to the extent possible, to the timing of any mediation based on that readiness. In other words, forcing mediation too early in a one-size-fits-all may actually undermine productivity and the ability to resolve or settle a case. Now, in addition to the parties, it is important to consider the children's reaction to divorce. And in particular, I'm going to focus on adult children because they are often forgotten. In my work with parent education, I have seen the impact of their parents' divorce on adult children. Contrary to what may commonly be assumed, it can be difficult, just as difficult, for an adult child to handle the divorce of their parents as it is for younger children. Often the pain adult children experience when their parents divorce is minimized by professionals and others, and even by their parents. The attitude and belief tend to be that older children will just get over it quickly or not feel any emotional pain or upset by the family changes. However, the current literature challenges that assumption and modifies how we should look at the impact of divorce on children, adult children. Perhaps the most devastating impacts of the divorce are experienced by college-age children. And what we'll see is a fairly common or typical scenario is that the divorce is initiated after the children have graduated from high school and are out of the home and attending college or working, because the parents assume that the kids, quote unquote, can now handle it better. In reality, this is probably the time when the child is more rather than less vulnerable to this dramatic life change. The 18-year-old plus child or young adult may be in the midst of physically moving out of the home and trying to establish new relationships, and as he or she transitions to an independent life. His or her friends and support group are no longer readily available to them, and it is a period filled with uncertainty and self-doubt and has an increased potential for harmful conduct. It is also a time when intimate relationships are being explored and formed, and a time when experiencing their party's divorce, especially if a bitter or conflicted divorce, can undermine the child's own relationship formation. In my experience, all professionals need to be more attuned to the legally emancipated children of the marriage and to counsel the client or patient about the need to consider them and not solely or predominantly focus on the under 18 children. Susan, I know you've done some research in this area. What's that taught you about some of the reactions and issues which impact adult children whose parents divorce?
Well, with adult children, I covered it in one chapter of the book, and each of the characters described their particular and unique situations with their adult children, but I kind of tried to generalize the research through these characters. And what I found is that, you know, it's like snowflakes, like people going through a divorce. Adult children are very different. it depends on, what their family of origin was like, or what they had in terms of relationships with each of the parents, the degrees of conflict that they saw their parents having over time and during that time as adult children in the divorce. So it's all very different. To give some examples of how they feel, they hold one parent responsible for the breakup sometimes, and you see them siding with one parent. We can't ignore the fact that they have their own grief and feelings of abandonment sometimes. They see, like the people going through the gray divorce, they're seeing everything dissolve. Maybe the family home is going away. Relationships are changing with relatives and friends. Where can they go and see people? Where is it comfortable? What's the financial situation now? Can they be helped at all or not helped? So there's all that. And then in the parents having their own grief, they may not be able to give as much as they were giving before to their adult children because they're going through their own experiences. And the parents think, oh, well, they're adults, they'll get over it, but, they have their own unique feelings about it. Sometimes parents bring a girlfriend or boyfriend into the mix too soon. Sometimes there is no too soon. The adult children don't ever want to accept somebody new, or, they'll accept it for one parent, but not the other. Parents can denigrate one another, as we knew from parent education classes for younger children. It still can be a very serious thing for adult children to hear that. Sometimes the adult children are put in the middle of a conflict, and they become the referees, just like some of the younger children do. You see role reversals where there's a burden to take care of one or both of the parents, and that can create an enormous amount of stress for the adult children. They can be used as a confidant. Perhaps the parents should be in therapy, perhaps they should be talking to their friends, or maybe they've done all that and there's still spillover and they're still talking to their adult children because they're close to them and they feel comfortable, and they're not creating maybe an appropriate boundary at that point to say, no, I really shouldn't be talking to my adult children about this. Believe it or not, holiday issues, as you know, still don't go away. Who gets to spend time with the adult children, and how is that all configured? You may see some gray divorces where you'll see everybody sitting around the holiday table together, including, new boyfriends and girlfriends, et cetera, and then there's situations where that could never happen. And so it all depends. And different adult children have different views on what they would want it to look like, and maybe they're realistic about what it could look like. Then when they start having their own children and there's grandchildren in the mix, what do you tell the grandchildren about the gray divorce? How do you frame it for them? It's great if you could say, well, you have all these extra people to love you, but, then there are issues how to handle that. There's all kinds of problems with blended families. That's a whole topic for, another webinar. But how complex that can be, and it doesn't get any easier with adult children. And sometimes there are problems that these adult children have with their own relationships, and as a consequence of the divorce. Maybe they go through a period where they don't see themselves as getting married because of what happened, or they don't want to have children because of what happened. It was mentioned to me by Leslie Friedland that in the programs for adult children that FamilyKind runs, some of these adult children say, they don't know what to believe about what the relationships were. Was any of it real? Was their family real? How did the relationships go down, really? But what I've also seen is that if the children have a good relationship with each parent, and they can continue to have a good relationship with each parent, it doesn't really matter what was real about the parents' relationship or not. Some parents hide it from the children, most children see through it, but sometimes they don't, or the parents may not be aware of what's going on completely. So it's all very different with that, and the children react very differently, but we can't leave the adult children out in terms of professionals dealing with the whole family, because it really is a whole family issue, and it continues forever. Weddings, funerals, every family event, it goes on for the adult children and then for their children. Justice Frazee?
Yeah, just to piggyback on some of your comments, Susan, again, the adult children are kind of left out there on their own in so many aspects. First of all, courts don't have jurisdiction over them, so the court rarely does a judge spend much time, if any, looking into what the situation is with an adult child and how they're faring through the whole divorce. Unfortunately, parent education classes are predominantly focused, or if not completely, pretty much focused on the under 18 child. So they get missed in that field, or in that service that's being offered. And then there are also usually fewer support groups for adult children of divorce, such as group counseling. So that's why I just do want to emphasize, as Susan mentioned, that it is important for all the professionals, other professionals besides the judge involved in a divorce matter, to discuss with your client or your patient how their older children are faring, and not just ignore them because I think it's an important subject to talk to your clients or patients about. Fortunately, more resources are being created to address older children. For instance, FamilyKind has a support group, or support groups, I guess, for adult children which are meeting with great success. So hopefully help is on the way and becoming more available for this demographic. One last thought I wanted to have you keep in mind, and that is that research literature has found that the most harmful factor for children is being exposed to their parents' conflict. So it may actually be of more emotional help to the children for parents to divorce and end the children's exposure to harmful conflict than to continue the conflict-filled marriage for the sake of the children by waiting until the children are 18 years old and or out of the house to initiate divorce proceedings. I would just like to plant in your minds that when a client or a patient comes to you and indicates that they're thinking about divorcing, but they're concerned about going forward because the children are still in the household and they don't want to damage them, you should explore the presence and level of conflict in the household and the circumstances of all the children before issuing your advice or opinion. Another important consideration is the emotional and physical health of the parties and how that plays into the advisability of moving forward with a divorce. And Susan, I know you've looked at some of the stressors that come out of a divorce situation, and if you want to just cover some of those maybe for us.
Yes, and I want to reiterate what you're saying about the adult children being in the middle of a high conflict situation. One of the things I read about and I've heard about is that some of them express great relief that their parents are no longer going to be living together, and they're actually much happier afterwards that they don't have to deal with that anymore. So that's very real. Mm-hmm. And divorce is stressful for everybody. For the adult children, as we've been discussing, and it's listed as among the top life stressors that anyone can experience, and it can lead to a myriad of health issues. And, although you may not be a doctor, a medical doctor, you can always refer, or psychiatrist, you can always refer your clients to experts that can help them with their health issues, because you want to be able to minimize the negative outcomes for them, even if it's just referring them to various resources. So with grief, we touched on certain mental health aspects, but there's a lot of physical health aspects too. And in my research, reading about all the diseases that come from stress and from divorce. It's really very mind-boggling how much it can affect somebody's life. Even after the legal aspects of the divorce are finalized, the health aspects can remain for many years. So, it's like with long COVID, you don't want long divorce mental health issues or physical health issues because of the enormous stress that's endured. So divorce is listed as among the top stressors on an inventory scale, which predicts which events are likely to cause a stress-induced health breakdown within 2 years. And one study found that people who have gone through a gray divorce, they report higher levels of depression than those whose spouses died. That was a surprising finding for me. The grief, depression, anxiety, and feelings of being overwhelmed, which accompany divorce, are all stresses for the body. And you can read a ton of literature about the impact of chronic stress on every organ and system in the body. So I think it's important with clients to deal with the whole person and to be very, very aware if you see that they're going through an enormous amount of stress. You want to try to help them to minimize that right from the get-go. Justice Frazee, what are some health issues that you've observed in the context of a gray divorce?
Well, I have to say, I think many of the same stressors, reactions are present in a gray divorce as in a divorce of younger parties. But the main difference I see is that, or I did see when I was handling these cases, is that the health issues can be more serious due to age and also of longer duration. And by that, I guess I mean less likely to be amenable to treatment or to come around quickly. Again, because of the increased age of the parties and the corresponding reduction in their resilience. In other words, age-mature parties may have exacerbated health responses to the divorce and related stresses. And then some of the specific mental health issues that can occur are depression and anxiety, as you mentioned, loss or gaining of weight, sleep deprivation, and that can have more consequences than one would think, because in addition to the mental health effects, an individual who experiences difficulty sleeping for prolonged periods may also have their resting blood pressure negatively affected, which can lead to heart attacks and other health risks. And also there can be an increased dependency on drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes, and a reaction to stress. So maybe people who had stopped smoking got back into that habit again. There can also be physical consequences associated with the gray divorce. Probably the number one thing that everybody thinks about would be to have heart issues due to the increased stress that can come from sleep deprivation, as I mentioned earlier, but also just straight out from the stress that leads to higher levels of inflammation for women in particular, and that women who divorced at least once are at a higher risk than men for heart attacks. That's been revealed in one study. Stress can also lead to spikes in the stress hormone cortisol, which can elevate blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar levels. And then there can also be excess inflammation from stress that can lead to everything from a cold to autoimmune disorders. So I think a lot of us have even just experienced when we're stressed, we're more likely to pick up a cold or some other illness. So that's no different for people going through the stress of a gray divorce. Also, there might be, if people are just kind of obsessed with what's going on with the divorce and just can't move, and they're not exercising, they can develop mobility problems, or are more likely than a younger party to develop mobility problems. And then diabetes is another consequence of the stress, as is metabolic syndrome, which is high blood pressure, high blood sugar, abnormal cholesterol levels, and excess body fat around the waist. And again, metabolic syndrome increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, and diabetes, which have to be or can be controlled with diet and exercise. But getting people focused to doing those healthful things that they need to do when their mind is into the divorce can be difficult. Also, there can be a tendency for unprotected and unsafe sex, which can lead to the contracting of sexually transmitted diseases. So there is a wide panoply of different mental and physical effects that can happen due to the stress of a divorce. But again, they tend to be exacerbated in the context of a gray divorce when the parties are older and less resilient. So, Susan, do you have any ideas for the way that clients can improve their health during this difficult time? So, as I mentioned, sometimes they're not inclined to do that, but there are some ideas that they could hopefully be told about and pushed, or encouraged to do to help themselves.
That's true. And the whole idea of self-care came out in the research that I did for gray divorces. And also even today in the Times, there was an article about the importance of self-care before you can really do anything for anyone else. And so I think it's very important to emphasize to clients that they really need to take care of themselves. You can understand why they would want to drown themselves in wine, or open up that Haagen-Dazs and go through that, or just sleep a lot, or go out and start having random sex, or whatever people do to get through things. We all understand that people are not perfect and they're going to do what they do. But I think if all the professionals around them emphasize how important it is to exercise, how that, maybe just having a goal of getting in the best shape of your life can turn it all around for you, in the sense that you feel better, maybe you'll meet new people, you look better, and life can start looking rosier than if you just, sink into it all. So exercise and healthy eating. People sometimes are ashamed to have therapy. If it's emphasized, therapy is a good thing to do. If not a gray divorce support group, maybe an individual therapist. There's people have all different financial situations, but there are things that are no cost or low cost. And so it's important to know about some of those for your clients. Meditation and yoga are definitely vehicles towards, a healthier mind and body. I mean, we all know that there's a connection between the mind and the body, but not everybody is educated about that. And it's good to know how important that is. Sometimes people stop taking their prescribed medications, or they don't go to the doctor or dentist for regular checkups. They just stop caring about themselves. So it's important to just rally around them and maybe give them a little checklist of some things, positive things that they could do for themselves. As I mentioned, drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, all those things are coping mechanisms, but they're really not the best. So by emphasizing these other healthier options, maybe a more plant-based diet, they could find themselves actually being happier. Also, some people self-isolate. They're very ashamed of, what's going on, or they're embarrassed, or whatever the emotions are around it. But seeing friends is very important, and emphasizing that. Not self-isolating, joining groups, having supportive, if they're girlfriends, if it's some group you go to, whatever it is. And then there's the whole issue of dating when clients are ready. As I said, there's a chapter on that in the book. We don't have time to go into that here, but next steps, being able to have a new life is really important for everyone to see that, yes, life can go on, there is hope, and there is something else on the other side. So if we can help them to see that they're not going to be drowning in sorrow forever, that's a good message. Judge Frazee?
Sure. And listening to you, Susan, it kind of hit me that as attorneys in particular, we're attorneys and counselors at law. And I think a lot of what you're saying is our role is bigger than just talking to the clients on the legal issues. And it's important, I think, to look at the whole person and take a more holistic approach to fully and really to the best of our ability represent clients and really understand who they are and help them find where they need to be and get there, at least give them some ideas for that. And that, of course, I think that tends to be more the bailiwick of the mental health professionals, but it doesn't hurt for attorneys to get into that realm either. So I think the more times an individual hears a message, the more likely they are to act on it and to absorb it. But I think in addition to the emotional and physical health, divorce can also impact the financial well-being of people. So there's a wide area of issues that need to be addressed. And I think, as many of us know, a divorce can significantly dissipate retirement resources and other financial resources and adversely affect both parties financially. Any pension or retirement savings, such as a 401k, now must be separated and shared by two people in two households rather than shared and used as a single household. However, that impact is more likely to be greater on women in a gray divorce, simply because the pretty well-known fact that women do not have as long in the workforce as men because of child raising and raising responsibilities. And also, they typically do not have the same income opportunities and level as men. So women are more adversely affected in the typical sense. And I don't want to generalize to say in every case, but I think as a general rule, they are more impacted financially in a negative way after divorce. And especially, again, in gray divorce, because there is less time to recover financially, when one may be right at the retirement point or close to it. So there's not a lot of time to sock away more money to help in retirement or in future years. You may have read some of the available literature describing the gray divorcing women as disproportionately affected by divorce financially. That's just following up on what I just said. And the statistics show that the average woman has a 45% decline in her standard of living after divorce, while the average man has a 21% decline in standard of living. Further, the studies reveal a 27% poverty rate for women over age 63 who had a gray divorce, which is higher than other senior groups, including widows. So one study found that a woman's credit score falls more than does a man's credit score after divorce. Moreover, it is estimated that women live 5 years longer than men on average. So whatever resources a woman has must last longer. So there are financial implications, but a lot of these implications tend to hit the women more, have more of an impact negatively on women than on men. So the financial issues for women in their late 50s to early 60s divorcing after a long-term marriage are very real. And the potential negative economic impact is worse the closer one gets to retirement. Gray divorcing women may never have been in the workforce. They may already be out of the workforce, or they will soon be. And thus, as I mentioned previously, there's not much time to recover. So obviously, this has tremendous implications for financial security and stability in retirement. And are there ways that we can counsel some of these parties and the women in particular in how to adapt after a divorce, especially a gray divorce, Susan?
Yes, absolutely. You know, one chapter in the book dealt with all these financial implications, and we had a few high-powered women with careers, but trying to hold on to their careers. One who was a very part-time worker, one who stayed home, raised the children, and never worked outside the home. So I tried to get in all the different considerations for those women and what would happen to them. Piggybacking on what you were saying, one survey found that the median 401k balance of baby boomer women is less than half of what it is for baby boomer men. And, you know, that's a pretty significant statistic. And then too, you know, for the women that were never in the workforce, so very part-time, all of that, how do they catch up? And again, we're talking about the fear factor, of facing how they're going to, survive and thrive in their new financial world. Clients have to be counseled that the same money that was supposed to be for one retirement now is going to have to cover 2 retirements. And so they may have to extend the time that they would retire, or they may have to get into the workforce. Women often want to keep a large asset, such as their house, which can be a mistake, although it feels more secure to be living where you've always lived and you're comfortable and the children are used to being there. It can drain the money and it's not giving them an income stream. And then they couldn't cover the expenses afterwards when they held on to it. So that's something to be considered and talked about. Women are very worried about living in poverty, and sometimes it almost doesn't matter what they've earned or what they have. They still feel that may be a possibility because many women are not comfortable handling money. And with older people, men and women have difficulty in getting or keeping their employment. So that's a concern. They have to be counseled about health coverage and Medicare and Social Security benefits, which may not provide enough for them. The fact that some women lack a credit rating and how do they get into that stream. They need to be counseled about getting adequate insurance, disability, life, if it can be afforded, long-term health care. And then there's the whole issue that they're going to need a will, they're going to need a healthcare proxy and a living will. So there's a lot to be talked about with them. And what's very surprising for some women, even professional women who have 6-figure incomes, so after a divorce, sometimes they've had a good credit rating and a joint credit card with their husband, and they may be told, oh, well, we don't want to issue that credit card. Or they go to rent an apartment and they're told, even with the 6-figure income, well, we really need somebody to co-sign this lease, and that kind of thing. So these are very surprising things that happen to women, and they need a lot of counseling around those issues. Judge Frazee,
So
want to add something?
I think just to follow up on what you just said, Susan, I think the overarching reality and concept is that it's a depressing situation that after a great divorce, people are faced with a declining financial stability, probably more so than in a divorce for the younger person. But what can be done about it? And there are a few things. I think, first of all, again, as people as professionals working with a divorcing couple, don't just assume that they know how to budget or handle assets and money. Even if money is tight, clients should probably be encouraged to hire a professional to assist them, such as a financial advisor or accountants. The advice received and potential financial knowledge may actually create a savings or avoid making mistakes that can pay for the expense of that additional professional. Clients must understand, as you mentioned, that one of the first things they need to do is not just to fill out their financial affidavits, net worth statements, but also to create an inventory of assets, particularly if assets are limited. So it's a dual purpose, one for the requirements of the divorce itself, but also for the person's requirements and needs going forward so they know what they have. Parties should be counseled about tracking income and expenses to create a budget to be more fiscally responsible. And also you should probably tell your clients, as Susan mentioned, not to make any big decisions that would impact their finances for some time after the divorce. I think there might be, in some cases, a euphoria after the divorce, or just this feeling that I deserve this after having gone this long, through this awful thing. And parties may be tempted to buy a new house or buy a new car or treat them to some other fairly expensive item, or take a vacation, for instance, just to make themselves feel better. But they should be advised to hold off while their emotions are running high, because the expenses of the divorce are typically so great that they will need time to recoup, live within their budget, and make non-emotional decisions. And in fact, it's kind of similar to what I know some of my friends who've lost spouses have been told, and that is, don't make any major decisions for at least a year after your loss. because emotionally you're not in a good place to make good decisions. So, and Susan, I think that brings us to about the end of our time that we have to talk, because we want to leave some time for Q&A. And I do want to just mention to everybody that there are some additional slides that we have on other issues such as age discrimination in the workplace, which some of your clients may encounter as they get back out into the workplace, especially after the divorce is concluded. And those will be made available to you if you want them, together with all the slides that we've had during the course of our discussion. So Susan, did you want to just talk about some of the resources that you talked to
Yes.
over, found in your research?
One thing is that there are a lot of slides about age discrimination and employment. I just want to emphasize that the best ways to counteract ageism, to tell your clients and work with them a little bit, is they need to stay current and update their skills. They have to project ambition. You can help them with that. They need to project energy and flexibility. They may have to update their resumes and online profiles and update their physical appearances. And all of these things can help them to move on. In terms of other resources, as we mentioned, FamilyKind has programs for adult children of divorce and other programs. You can find divorce support groups at local community centers, including WISE and JCCs. You should have some kind of roster of lawyers and therapists and financial professionals whom you respect. Every area is different and you know what's best in your areas. There's also many, many articles and books available online, including my book and court websites by state. There's a New York State website, which is on this particular PowerPoint slide. So as time goes on, and almost every day you see a new resource for gray divorce. And it seems like this is going to be a trend for a while, and it's something that you're going to have to be dealing with professionally. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today to discuss this very important topic. We all know people who are contemplating a gray divorce, are undergoing one, or in the aftermath of it in both their personal and professional lives. And if we can all be sensitive to their main concerns and help them along the way, we will be doing a great service for families. And I have to say, it's been my great, great honor to co-present with Justice Frazee, who's dedicated her career to helping divorcing and separating parents, and was the creator of the New York State Parent Education and Awareness Program, and is still volunteering her time to assist. And my years in working with her on that program were some of my most golden years, not by age, but by sunshine. And I want to thank Leslie Friedland also for her time and support in our presenting this program. 10 years ago, she started FamilyKind, and she's done incredible work carrying on all of these traditions and going in new and important directions. And her dedication as the leader is exemplary, and we're very grateful to be in her midst.
And I just want to also say it has been a pleasure to be a part of this program and to provide you with some information that will hopefully assist your clients through many of the unique considerations and aspects of a great divorce. Also, my thanks to Susan, not only for the wonderful job she did as the director of the New York State Parent Education and Awareness Program, and it was a delight to work with you too, Susan, but also for her ever curious and productive mind, which led to her insightful book on gray divorce. And of course, much appreciation to Leslie Friedland and her staff at FamilyKind for providing this forum and all their technical support. FamilyKind is a tremendous asset and resource for families and the professionals who assist them in family-related legal matters. And I just also want to thank all of you for joining us for this presentation. And I sincerely hope that you found some things of benefit from this program. So my best to all of you and to your clients and patients. And I just want to note, I think we've got a few questions here. So let me just start with taking those. First question, how do you help divorcing gray parties deal with having to leave a very long-term home, more than 50 years, and maybe the accompanying community and support system. Do you have any ideas on that one, Susan?
Yes, I think leaving the family home is an incredibly painful experience, even for people who are not undergoing a gray divorce. You know, when they're going to the next stage of downsizing, it can be painful. But I think if you emphasize to your clients that even if you had stayed married, likely you would be downsizing at a certain point from a house to, you know, a condominium or some other arrangement, because it's financially so much better to do that, and you don't really need all that space anymore. And once you kind of Maria Kondo, you know, your life, and you reduce it down to its essentials, I think emphasizing that getting rid of the old and making room for the new and all the philosophy behind that is really an important philosophy. And that while it's painful to go through it, maybe you need somebody to come over to the house and help you to make those piles and get rid of things. In terms of the support system in your community, it may be that you choose to remain in the community, but in a different size dwelling, and that's fine too. Or maybe you find that your dream was always to live in Manhattan, or, you know, in Dutchess County in the middle of the country, and you can go and do that. So I think if it's framed as a positive thing, that the next step is an adventure, and if everyone can look at their lives as having different stages, and that maybe the next stage will be their very best stage.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, how do the 5 stages of grief impact the court system re divorce? Specifically, if a woman is in denial or depression stage and isn't thinking clearly, how can a client really know what they want in the divorce? And that's a difficult issue, because typically the judges and the courts are on a timeline to try to move cases through the system. And I don't think, by and large, many judges will not hold up and wait until the clients are at a good point in a good place in their lives personally to handle the issues before the court. I think if that's the case, it may not, I would, as a judge, I would have taken just as during conferences or whatever, and, you know, just a discussion with the attorneys when I'm trying to resolve a case in a conference, you know, an indication with other counsel present, of course, that the client's having a problem, and could we just have some more time? And I know upstate's a little different than downstate, but I think in that case, a lot of judges would accede to that request and kind of delay a little bit and not just stick right to the timeline for trying to push a divorce through the court system. I think, as we discussed, perhaps another approach is being supportive of the client as much as you can and trying to find them support to get out of the phase that they're stuck in, although that can be very difficult. And there might, I mean, these stuck phases can last for a year or more. So, and that's, you're not going to be able to deal with the court system and the divorce and have to tell the client, we need you to focus a little bit and try to get your, you know, try to help yourself as much as you can to move forward. And the best, I think, sometimes that an attorney can do is just protect the client from doing anything disastrous in terms of where they come out in the whole divorce proceeding. So, Sue, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I would just say that, you know, sometimes professionals can be a little impatient because they are operating on a certain timeline and the client is not being cooperative with that timeline. And I really get that. But I think approaching the client with more sensitivity and understanding where they're at, but explaining the system to them and why they may have to go at a slightly different pace can really help them to get through it. But I think, you know, the worst thing is to say, you need to move on, you need to move on, because, you know, people, of course they want to move on, but maybe they can't at that particular moment. So, you know, patience is difficult, but probably something that is a real gift in dealing with families in this situation.
Okay, and I see we're getting the signal that we have reached our limit time-wise, and there's a few questions left here. And if those of you who asked the questions, or if any of you want to stay on, I can perhaps type answers to you, but I'm not the best at typing, so it may take me a while. The other way may be to send something out by email. I'll see if that's, but I don't know what my
Yes.
options are technically, Nate.
Yep. So those who submitted questions, we will be able to follow up with an email response to those. So we will make sure to get those answers to you as soon as we can. Unfortunately, it looks like we are going to have to close our session for today. We have hit time. So I wanted to thank the both of you for your excellent presentation, as well as thank all of the attendees who were able to be here today to listen. I just have a few last remarks. I want everyone to please remember FamilyKind on Giving Tuesday, as donations are being collected so that FamilyKind can continue to provide quality programming free of charge, similar to this webinar that you are all in attendance right now. We also request that you follow FamilyKind on your social media channels and add your name to the mailing list to keep in touch for future events and resources. A recording of the seminar today will be posted to the FamilyKind website as well in the near future. So once again, I want to thank both of our presenters, Leslie Friedland, the sponsors, Our Family Wizard and SoberLink, and all of you for being present today. We hope you have a wonderful holiday break after this very hectic year, and I hope you all enjoy your evening.
Thank you.